My name is Alana. Welcome to my YouTube channel. On this channel, we review books. I just drafted this review yesterday evening. Owls Do Cry by Janet Frame, who I'm a fan of. Like I was saying, I drafted this yesterday evening, or so I'm recording this on August. Oh my gosh, October 25th. So I drafted it yesterday evening, and I haven't actually edited this yet, so I might be editing as fixing some typos here. We'll see. But you've got the mark, Faye. I saw it there. We all carry some kind of mark like that because we are all branded in our lives. Whew. Okay, Janet Frame. I've talked about Janet Frame before on this channel. Faces in the Water is a fantastic novel. It's a heavy novel, but it's a fantastic novel. Also written by Janet Frame. So this is my second Janet Frame novel. And it's been on my list for 4 to 5 years now since I read Faces in the Water, which I've read twice. And this summer I saw this in a bookstore and I was like, what? Janet Frame? She's under the radar a lot of the time. And so when I purchased this book and I went to the till or the cash register, the woman behind the register was like, she got really excited because she was like, oh, she's so underread. And so she was excited to see somebody purchase a Janet Frame. And she asked me if I had read her before. And I said, yes. And so she is a New Zealand author. She's considered one of New Zealand's most renowned authors. And I just think more people need to read her. She is so good. So Owls Do Cry. This was her first published novel. And it's about the Withers family. They are poor. And it's very obvious that they're poor. Just in, the state of their home, their clothing, etc. And there are 4 children in the Withers family. And these children are all a bit quirky and odd in their own ways compared to their peers. A tragic event occurs within the family. And the aftermath of that event still manifests itself in the children's lives as adults. And most notably for Daphne, who spends years of her adult life in an asylum. And if you didn't know, Janet Frame also spent some years of her adult life in an asylum in the mid-20th century. And she was misdiagnosed with schizophrenia, and she was scheduled for a lobotomy. But as fate would have it, I want to make sure I'm getting the timeline right. I might be a little off here. My memory serves me. She was up for a literary award, and a doctor intervened right in time, and that lobotomy never happened. But I will say, and this is not a spoiler because it even says it on the back of the book, that Daphne does end up being lobotomized. The Withers family seems to be burdened by a cycle of struggles and burdened. There's a typo. And no matter how much they try to change their circumstances, there seem to be certain barriers that they just can't surpass. And even in routine, or when things seem to be okay, it's really masking some type of it's masking something. There is denial there and false narration. Just because somebody says that everything is okay or it's fine doesn't mean it's true. I mean, think about it. How many times have you had, you're at work perhaps, and maybe you're really not having a good day, or something could be happening outside of work that's nothing to do with work, but life is lifing, and your coworker, oh, how are you doing? I'm fine, thanks. No. You know what's funny, side note? When people ask me how I'm doing, I'm like, I'm here. I am not that person for the most part. If you ask me how I'm doing, it depends. It depends on who it is, but there are times I usually don't fake it. People are like, how you doing? I'm here. Life's lifing, but here we are. I'm not usually that person. Sometimes it's like, I'm fine, I'm okay. Nah, it's for the birds. Man, a coworker asked me, this is frequent for me, how are you doing? I was like, I'm not in jail. I could be, but I'm not. But just in case, I got bail money. Each time they made their way and the world had dropped them for a while to a peaceful hiding place, it would again seize them with a burning What? This quote is so janky. This quote has so many typos in it. I had to find my outline. Here, where this is in the book. Okay. And each time they made their way, and the world had dropped them for a while to a peaceful hiding place. And each time they made their way, and the world had dropped them for a while to a peaceful hiding place, it would again seize them with a burning one of its million hands, and the struggle would begin again and go on and never finish. I feel I have done nothing, though what I should be doing, I don't know. I do not know. And it's just the feeling of getting nowhere and of time passing. She says the same thing over and over in her letter. That everything is well, that everybody is happy. And she says it like a chant of denial. So you can't help knowing that nothing is well and nobody is happy. She couldn't understand what had happened when the foam melted away and she found herself holding nothing. Each of the members of the Withers family is lonely in some way. So we have the 4 children, Daphne, Chicks, Toby, and Francie. And then we have the parents, Mr. and Mrs. Withers. Frame paints this elegantly through the worn clothing, the state of the house or the houses as the children grow up. Toby stays at home, Chicks marries well, etc. Daphne's in an asylum. Also, the dreams that these characters have at night expose their vulnerabilities and their loneliness, even their fears. Their never-changing routines. It permeates the whole novel. The siblings in particular withdraw into themselves in various ways, even in adulthood. Whether that be through the image of a perfect life, Chicks in particular, marries well. And from the outside looking in, she would have that ideal housewife life. Or they may escape in their own imaginations and future goals or aspirations. Or there's a type of silence that they may implement as a means of protection. But it only can exacerbate their loneliness. And some of these quotes are going to make this make more sense. Yes, giants and fairies in different shapes. There's a giant bomber and a giant loneliness. Belied by the fear and loneliness that flowed round and round. And Toby carries it backward and forward across continents and seas and does not understand it, though it glitters and strikes part of the fire in him. And Chicks is afraid and covers it with washing machines and refrigerator and a space heater behind glass. Everything behind glass is valuable. So Daphne thought and did not speak. All of these characters, especially these siblings, misunderstood in some way, or they've been ostracized in some way. Chicks is the only one who has the most normal life. Again, it's this housewife life. But she is drawn to narratives, movies, and stories about oppressed women. Though she goes on and on and on about how perfect her husband is, Chicks is an incredibly unreliable narrator. She goes on and on and on about how perfect her husband is, but she's drawn to narratives like Wuthering Heights, and she makes comments about the movies or the books that she's reading, and she's drawn to narratives about these really abusive men. And Chicks, having been brought up poor and then marrying up, she's inherently insecure. Toby is actually epileptic, and that has ostracized him from a young age. And then you have this thing that has happened within the family. Then you have Daphne. So the Withers, in a lot of ways, have always been on the outskirts of normalcy. Of normalcy. They don't quite fit in, even if they try to. Frame, again, like I said, Frame is clearly paying homage to herself having been misdiagnosed, like I said earlier, with schizophrenia, and having spent many years tucked away in an asylum, and how society categorizes or treats those who fit outside of society's standards of normalcy. What we used to think of as treasure wasn't really treasure at all. Ours was a childish outlook, not allowable in an adult who has to adjust himself to a complex society. I'm trying to bring my children up to fit in with things. This gang gets in your nerves. I always think something will happen when they come out like this, all dressed up as if they were real people. We're going to change you so that you'll be able to live in the world and be just like other people. This novel is written in parts, and each part is from a different sibling's perspective. And so we do get a portion of the narrative from Daphne and her stay in the asylum. Again, after the tragic events of what happened, this tragic event that happened in the Weathers family, when the children are young, the reader actually isn't provided with what happened with Daphne between that time of the event in the asylum and her being entered into it, going into an asylum as an adult and remaining there for years. I think, though, as a reader, you can kind of determine what the correlation is between the event and Daphne ending up in an asylum. There had to have been some type of withdrawal within herself after this event that leads others to believe that she's insane. Daphne's years at the asylum, my throat's getting a little dry. Water, that's why my voice kind of cracked there. I can hear my voice going a little hoarse. Daphne's years at the asylum were foreshadowed at the beginning of the novel. And before we get her portion of the narrative, before we get to her portion of the narrative, the other siblings make commentary on Daphne in the asylum. So we know what's coming. The two girls did not really know what the mill was, except that years ago, small children had worked in mills, never seeing the sunlight for years, so that when they were rescued, they turned blind like pit ponies and had to be led about on a leather strap that scarred them for the rest of their lives. I had another letter from Daphne, a very strange letter. I don't know if they'll ever cure her, even with these modern treatments like electric shock and insulin shock and that new kind of brain operation you read about in the papers, the kind where they change the personality. How terrible to be deprived of one's personality. Remember, she said sternly, everybody is trying to help you. It's up to you to cooperate and pull yourself together. And Daphne lived there alone for many years. Amid the assault and insinuation of sound and days, unchanging and nights without darkness. First the farm cries from the hill, the array of surging animal talk whipped in and out of the morning mist, the ear strangled in a noose of bark, crow, cry, and scream from the other farm, the down place with its row of stables rich with steaming manure from imbeciles in the long dead mad plotting, their daily treasure in the small mountain room of four corners in a wooden pocket window, in the struggle to take hold of time between the slat shadows of an unreal sun, for there the day is day, but never. Daphne said nothing. Inside herself, she thought, they are mad, they are frauds, they are thieves who sneak through the night and day of their lives, exchanging their counterfeit whys and hows and wheres. I got 20% battery left. I'm going to wrap this up. Janet Frame, when she talks about asylum life, she often relates it to being treated like livestock. And this is something that was in Faces in the Water, as you can see in that second to last quote, which was pure poetry and not the easiest to read out loud, but pure poetry. And so she describes the layout of the asylum grounds as stables and farmland, and the inmates as livestock, and they're treated as such. And Janet Frame, again, is going to be a big proponent in her writing of not blending in with society. She's promoting that difference that makes you unique, but society wants you to fall in line. Like you said, how terrible to be deprived of one's personality. I'm going to wrap up. Again, I'm losing battery. And I've been talking for almost 2 hours. Owls Do Cry is a very haunting read, and it is incredibly sad. There were a few times when I got to certain portions of the book that I had to pause and put the book aside, let it marinate, before picking it back up and reading on. Janet Frame is one of those writers that really makes the reader feel. And that's a big statement coming from me because I am not the most emotive reader. I can be actually a very clinical and stoic reader at times. I can push through a lot of hard content. When the tragic event happens in this family, I actually teared up a little bit. I did, because I was like, what? And particularly how the mother responded to this event. And I had to close the book and put it down and let it marinate. This is a heavy read. This is a book that you have to pick up when you can tolerate being in that headspace. But Frame is such a gorgeous writer. She's poetic. Her writing, her sentences can be dense at times. They're incredibly full of meaning, and every word is deliberate. You will not and cannot, I think, expect to catch everything the first time, the second time, the third time. That is how detailed, precise, and dense some of her sentences are. But don't let that deter you, because that doesn't take away from the overarching themes of the book or your understanding of the book. You may not catch everything, but you will understand what's happening. It's just, you can't get frustrated by some of these sentences because they do take patience. She does force the reader to slow down. This is just one of those narratives. It's just something about it. Man, it's heavy, like I said, but it is deep. This is a story that's going to stick with me, as did Faces in the Water. And I look forward to diving into the rest of her work. She's a gem. This is going to topple over. So yes, I gave this a 4 out of 5. Faces in the Water to me is a 5 out of 5. And so this is her first novel, still well written, beautifully written, but Faces in the Water, you can still see how some of her writing was fine-tuned. And so that's why Faces in the Water is the 5 and not is a 5 for me. Have you heard about Janet Frame or any of her novels? Have you read any of her novels? Have you heard of this novel? Thoughts and comments below. Also, feel free to follow me on Instagram, where I get up to more bookish shenanigans. I post all of my book content there first. Weekly on a Sunday. Yeah, that's it. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.